thank you. Welcome to Israel, and thank you for what you are doing all over the world in order to stand with Israel, to defend Israel, and to advocate for Israel. I know that sometimes it's not easy because there's a process of delegitimization of the state of Israel, and there's a huge gap between what Israel is, between our real values, and between the image of Israel outside of Israel. And therefore, part of what we need to do is to bridge this gap in a better understanding what is Israel, and then it can make it easier for you to explain this to others that are swallowing and reading and listening to those that would never accept the existence of the state of Israel. And therefore, I believe that the only way to keep Israel and I believe that this is the vision of Zionism, to keep Israel as a Jewish democratic state, secured Jewish democratic state in the land of Israel, but we need to have more decisions in order to keep it. Because the basic condition to keep Israel as a Jewish democratic state is to have a Jewish majority. Because otherwise, we would face a clash between these two different values. The easiest thing is to say that there's a contradiction between the nature of Israel as a Jewish state and the values of democracy. But I believe that our responsibility is to have these values living in harmony and not in contradiction. And the only way, it's not enough, but it's a condition to have a Jewish majority, because otherwise we would need to choose between whether Israel is a Jewish state or a democracy, and this is something that I don't want that my children would ever or would never need to choose in the future. Now, therefore, I believe that the idea of two states for two peoples represent the Israeli interest. It's not a favor to the Palestinians, it's not a matter of weakness, it's not a favor to the Arab world, and it's not, with all due respect, it's not even a favor to the President of the United States. It is our own interest. Now, I said that Israel needs to be a Jewish democratic secured state. So security is something that we need to deal with. It's responsibility of every leader in Israel, left and right. Unfortunately, more and more Israelis believing that there is no hope for peace. And when we face terror, we need to be united against those that are against us, and that's it. And I believe that we shouldn't take off our vision from the table. And I believe that our vision is Jewish, democratic, secured state in the land of Israel, just and secured state. In the land of Israel, but not on the entire land. This is the vision. The conclusion is that two states for two people represent our interest. Not in any condition, not at any price. But this should be part of our aspiration. And I believe that as Israelis, as also as the nation state of the Jewish people, we should speak more and act in accordance not only to our interest, but in accordance to our values, to our interests as well. And when we are talking about this, we have a huge common denominator with the United States, with other states in the world. And when we say that we have shared values, and when we are speaking about unbreakable and unshakable ties and relations between Israel and the United States, it would be with real meaning and not just slogan. And from my experience as a foreign minister of the State of Israel, as a justice minister, I discovered that when I shared this with my colleagues, with different foreign ministers, with head of states, when I shared this with them, they would accept what I say, because it's not against the others. It's about vision that represent their own values, and I don't ask them to turn a blind eye from what we are doing, but I do ask them and demand them to judge us in accordance to their values. And now I'm leaving you and going to another committee, and the committee is the subcommittee of our Defense Committee, Defense and Foreign Affairs Committee, which relates to charges that are under different Palestinian NGOs and states, unfortunately, are putting against the Israeli soldiers. And there is one thing that I would never, never, never accept. And I say it not only as an Israeli politician, but also as a mother of two former soldiers in combat units in Israel. I would never, never, never accept any comparison of an Israeli soldier that is acting against terror, and unfortunately, in any war there are civil casualties, and between terrorists that are looking for civilians to kill. And what we are doing is that we are having committees of inquiries when they miss the terrorists and unfortunately harm civilians. When on the other side there are inquiry committees when they miss the children bus or the kindergarten or schools. And this is something that I demand the international community to accept. Not to turn a blind eye. You can criticize the Israeli government policy, but you can never put the Israeli soldiers and the terrorists in the same basket. And therefore I'm going now to the other committee to defend the Israeli soldiers. Okay.